Okay, hey everybody, welcome to our Thursday night book club. We are on the last chapter of 10x is easier than 2x. This has been one of my favorite books I think we've read in a long time. I just think it really kind of narrows down and gives us some really boiled down clarity on what we're trying to do in our businesses and what we're trying to actually go after. And he says to focus a lot on the 20%. So like your 20% of your unique ability, your unique talent, what do you have to offer? Like what is the 20% of the really huge value that you have to contribute, and basically delegating out that other 80% and or letting it go. So this chapter talked a lot about, it's titled Build a Self-Managing Company. And I felt like a lot of it kind of encompassed a lot of what we've already talked about in the other chapters. But so it was a really good, like tie it up in a bow and wrap it up. But we're just going to talk about it as if it's brand new. I thought this was so good to relate to us in trying to create teams and create business builders and how to apply this in our own businesses. I mean, at first it was like, man, how do you take this and apply it when it's, talking about turning company numbers and people and all this stuff, but it applies so well to what we're trying to do in our Plexus businesses. On page 202, where if you read the story about Susan that came in and took over the insurance company, it said that she took the time to stabilize, optimize, grow, and transform. She basically came in and like restructured everything. And I wrote down that she had to scale back to scale big. And I know that a lot of times I feel in my business so bogged down by so many overwhelming things that sometimes don't make me money at the end of the day, right? We can get so caught up in like having super creative graphics or having super all these team meetings and all of these fun, like it's fun to think of all these creative, exciting things, but at the end of the day, like what makes you money and what, like, I think it was it Brittany Howard, I think, that said, everything that you do it through the lens of how much money is this going to make me, because at the end of the day, this is your business. Your family's expecting you to show up for this like a business and show up for this professionally. They don't want you, off on a Thursday night at a book club just for fun. Like you're away from your family because this is your business. You're making money. Your whole point is to grow and build that legacy for your family. So, I loved that, being able to scale back to scale big. What made you, and I wrote down, what made you 10x before isn't going to make you 10x the second time around either. So where she said, or he said, Susan told me if they're going to go 10x again, it's not going to happen working with principals as the last 10x did. To go 10x from here, she said, we're going to need to capitalize on our amazing insurance platform. So you need to get everybody in their strengths. You need to get everybody, because it talks about that too. She freed him up and utilized her skills and passion to stabilize, optimize, and grow. And he was free to focus on learning, growing, and innovating. So it's like they got everybody in their own strengths, in their own lanes, and were able to basically move forward and run forward from there. And what got everybody there in the first run wasn't going to get everybody there in the second run. And I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but I remember in the very beginning, Jaime and Emily were saying, it's not the team that gets you to gold is likely not the same team that's going to get you to, emerald, which is likely not the same team that's going to get you to diamond. And I remember at the time thinking like, oh man, like, because I had that scarcity mentality of like, well, these are who I have. Like, if I lose these guys, who am I going to have? And it's funny because my team has changed quite a few times, and every single person has had a different strength to add, and every person has a different value. And, we do have some people that have been there pretty much from the beginning, and they're running in their strengths too. And so it is interesting to see that like the team that does get you, to gold isn't necessarily a team that's going to get you to diamond, because vision's going to change, your structure's going to change. You're going to have some people that aren't equipped to go, they don't have the vision to go all the way. You're going to gather people along the way who do have the vision to go all the way. So keep in mind that your business is ever evolving, and you always need to be thinking forward on what does this next season look like. And it's not always just let's just keep doing what we've always done. You always need to be working in your business and strategizing, looking at your numbers and seeing how you need to tweak things up and how you need to switch it up. I loved on page 212 when they were talking about how, what was his name? Tim, he had the USCCA business. And I loved where they talked about how he charged $47 a month for this membership. And then he added all of these things, and it would just, he wasn't even able to, it was not sustainable. So he had to make a tough decision, and he didn't just double or triple, he quadrupled his price of membership. He went to $200 a month. And at the time when I was doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so like, that's gutsy to just go from 47 to $200 a month. And he lost half of his members. And to me at the time, I was like, when I read that, I was like gutted for him. I'm like, oh, he lost half of his members. But then he says in the next sentence that his profits doubled. So he quadrupled everything. He lost half of his people, but his profits still doubled because he was still charging for what he knew his value was. So I thought that was pretty cool to read that. It's like, okay, so what am I doing where I'm completely undervaluing something in my business or something that I'm doing, or undervaluing another leader, where we can scale back a whole lot, operate out of their strengths, and, be excited about what you have to offer. Be honest about what you have to offer. If it's worth it, the right people will get in line and they will follow you. Higher quality, less quantity, laser focus, and clarity of mission and purpose is way more important than the quantity. It's way more important than getting a bunch of product users and getting, no, we want people, we want to speak to people, about what gut health is, right? I was trying to think of how I could apply this. And I'm like, this is just like when you're trying to get, let's start with like new joints. Like that's a small thing. Let's start with new joints. Well, I'm not trying to just get a bunch of new joints. Yeah, that's great in the moment. But what I want to do is I want to get quality people to join my team and to be product users. Even if it's just product users, I want them to be quality product users on my team. So I'm going to set them up with their resources that they need. I'm going to talk to them about Plexus perks. I'm going to get on the phone with them. I'm going to probably get on the phone with them with my sponsor. I'm going to show them all about Pivotal and how they can capitalize on Pivotal. I'm going to talk to them about the fact that it's going to take probably at least 90 days before they even see the slightest symptom change. If they see anything before that, great, that's awesome, but it takes time. So you want those quality people to join your team, because at the end of the day, if you have, 20 people join your team, but this month, but they drop off in the next 3 months, or you spend your time really developing and leaning into that 3 to 5 people joining your team, and you really equip them and set them up for long-term success, that's what matters in that long-term growth at the end of the day. It's like building your house on sand or building it on a rock is the difference that we're looking at there. Then there's a lot here. So I have my notes. You guys would be proud of me. I made notes tonight. I'm not winging it. I actually wrote notes here because there was just so much meat and goodness, and I didn't want to miss anything. On 214, it talks about the 7 principles of the psychographic alignment. And I thought these were interesting. I went through next to them and kind of wrote down what that would look like in Plexus, right? So where he talks about you need to have a story. So it's like, okay, that's us talking and posting about our story and our problem. He says, ideally a true story where you make your client your hero. How many times have we heard people talk about effective posting? And I know Genevieve has said it multiple times, like make your audience the hero of the story, make them the hero of the story. So I thought that was pretty cool to read that here. It's like, every good organization or association centers the client as the hero of the story, which I thought was pretty cool. An ideology is that wellness can benefit everybody. A symbol, the pink drink. We're all known for our pink drink. Everybody recognizes us by our pink drink. The shared rituals, we do that one kind of got me because it was like everybody shows their card. Everybody knows we do these things. And I'm like, gosh, what if we approached everything as if it was a ritual just that we do? When you join Plexus and you're a part of Plexus and you're part of your pink drink, you share about it. You talk about it. You post about your pink drink. It's just what we do. If you drink pink or if you're working the business, doesn't matter. We post about our pink drink. What if just having an event was just one of the rituals that we do, whether a product user or business builder? So if we made these things more of like our team rituals and not so much just like, well, maybe do you want to you don't have to do the business. It's just to try to go silver, whatever. What if we just made it like a ritual? It's just what we do. It's just a part of being on the team. The enemy, obviously, you know, fatigue. I wrote down complacency as the enemy, depending on whether you're talking about the business or I guess in your health journey. The language, we talk about ranks and IPA and subs and all this other stuff. So we definitely have our language there. And then an attractive character, and a servant, the hero. This is funny because at first I was like, you know, that would be, you know, like Alec and Tarl and Gene. I was like, but it's also us and how we lead and who we are and how we position ourselves as a strong leader, right? So put yourself in that situation too. And then next to that, or underneath that, he talked about the core principles of transformational leadership. And something I would challenge y'all to do that I did is next to each thing. So like idealized influence, transformational leaders are role models who, through their actions and values, inspire those who follow them, take risks and commit to chosen values, display convictions that create confidence. I'm not going to read those, but my point was next to each thing, like that one, I wrote Steve Jobs. Like I was trying to think of like strong leaders that I know and that I can admire that were extremely successful or are extremely successful. And next to each thing, I just wrote one leader. Some of them I know personally and some of them I don't. I just wrote one leader next to each value. And what I took some time afterwards to basically go through each leader that came to mind and say, okay, what is it that I admire about this leader? How do they take those risks? How do they value creativity and give each team member autonomy? How do, like, I went through and just wrote down all the different ways I admire these leaders. And this kind of goes along with these affirmations. And I know we've talked about this before on team calls and whatnot, but take that time to really think about why you admire those leaders and how you can grow those specific traits in yourself. Those specific things matter to you, so they probably matter a lot to somebody else. So how can you make yourself the most effective leader by, you know, writing down and reflecting on these things? Okay, so the next one we had on here. See, this is why I don't take notes, because I get lost in my notes and I'm like, okay, so 219. Oh, he talks about, okay, I love this too. He stopped needing to control the hows and instead began investing himself by getting increasingly high quality who's. He let those who's operate in their unique ability and increasingly manage themselves rather than control their every movement. We need to create those high quality who's. Yes, they can be found. I remember asking Jamie and Emily on our coaching call today, I was like, where do I get myself a Kinley? You know, Kinley. So she's like killing it all. I was like, how do I just find myself one of those? And those are great. They're great to come by, but for the most part, they need to be created and they need to be developed. And that is really a true test of you as a leader. So if you're going to create, if you are going to have people that are operating in a strong who and a strong, and their unique talents, you generally have to create those people. And it really comes down to, you know, they talked about the trust factor. So you as a leader, you're going to attract those high quality who's if they can trust you as a leader. If you don't have trust, you're not going to see transformational leadership. I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but it kind of goes hand in hand. If they don't trust you, then you're not going to be able to move into that next phase of entrepreneurship and leadership. So ways that you can develop trust with your team and create these high quality who's are really basic things. So like, are you showing up consistently? If you're telling them that they need to be on book club and team calls and stuff like that, like, are you on book club? Are you on team calls? Can they trust the fact that you're going to be there too? Are you doing your IPA? If you're telling them IPA is the way to be successful and you're telling them that, like, they're going to lose trust in you if you are not doing the things that you're asking of them. Are you late for things? If you plan meetings and schedule meetings with them, are you showing up late to those meetings? If you're showing up late, and you say, hey, we're going to do this meeting at noon, they're not going to trust you. They don't trust that we're doing this at noon. We're doing this at 12:10 because that's when you show up. So if you really want to develop trust, you really need to get strict about managing your own self and leading your own self and being on time, showing up, being consistent, Are you building relationships with those people on your team? If you really want to know where they fit and what their strengths and unique abilities are and how to create those who's, you have to build those relationships. You can't just go based off surface level. There's a lot of people who have a lot of really unique talents that you're going to have to pull out of them to develop them and make them strong leaders. Because at the end of the day, I loved where it said having a self-multiplying team is a natural extension of having a self-managing team, and which is what we're going for. That's literally exactly what we're trying to build, is a self-multiplying team. I want to go to bed and wake up with multiple joints. Celeste Gwynn posted her team members. She had like 4,000 and something team members join just last month. That is a ripple effect of her being a 12-star diamond or whatever she is because she has created leaders and put things into place so that her team is not just self-managing. She has a lot of really high quality, high caliber leaders on her team. But now it's self-multiplying. It's just growing. If she stopped and backed off today, that machine would just keep growing. Of course, she's not, because she's a beast and she is going to keep going, which is amazing. But I just think that's super cool to see that in motion. Is basically, like I said, she went to bed, and woke up and had that many new joins on her team. I just think that's so cool. I loved on 226. I'm just wrapping this up. On 226, they talked about, are you get clear on what your vision is, what your passion is, what your culture is. If you get super clear on that, you're going to start attracting the right people to your team. So if you want strong leaders, you need to be strong in what your vision, your culture, your passion, all of your strategies, all of those things. You need to be crystal clear about those things, because if you do have a strong leader who's ready to go, if you have a Susan, for instance, that comes to your team and is ready to join, and you don't have any idea of where you're trying to go, or they're not going to take you seriously. They're not going to trust you as a leader. So you need to be super crystal clear on where you're going so that people can trust that they can follow you. And then we went through the conclusion. I loved the questions that it asked on page 250. And I would just, if I were you, I would take the time to go through those. So what's your 10X vision? What's your 20%? Just go through those and answer those for yourself. So that's the application of this book. Fallon says you need to walk away with 5 to 7 action steps with every book. And those are some really good ways to get some crystal clear ideas on what you need to do to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to everybody else. I could keep going forever, but anyone have anything that stood out they wanted to share?
I get the question, not the question. I get the thought a lot sometimes from people over the years in terms of the, I don't know, call it fear or overwhelm or whatever. I'm thinking, well, from where I'm at now and what I'm doing in this work, like, how can I do this as a diamond? Because you just think of this thing scaling and having to do so much more and do all this. And this is the perfect example of spelling out, like when he talks about being a leader, and replacing yourself with more capable leaders. And he talks about uh, increasingly adding leaders and teams to accelerate the growth, right? So this is the example of the realtor who went and eventually hired her, was it her brother-in-law or whatever it was? And then she could go off into other countries and start new things. So when you look at getting to diamond, it's not because you're doing 100 times more work. It's this 10X concept. It's you are creating leaders who are creating leaders. You're creating leaders who are doing what you are doing. And just like the realtor, when you help the people who you're working with and develop them as leaders and they're off on their own, you can then go find 2 more people and you can help them get off on their own. And then you can go find 2 more people, like open up these new businesses in other countries kind of thing, concept, and then that's how you get to be this incredible 12-star diamond like Celeste Gwen that we all have goals for, right? And a very stable business. So it's not so much adding so much more to your plate, it's developing leaders. So then you have that section kind of off your plate a little bit and you have more room to create more growth. So it should be very, very empowering, I hope. and exciting to see that as something that's not as overwhelming when you look ahead into the future. And then one other really quick thing is he mentions on 222 at the top that if you have the right people on the bus, the problem how to motivate and manage them largely goes away, because they're not going to be the type that need to be motivated. They're going to be self-motivated. They're going to be driven, right? And I think that's really good and important to realize. I think it's also important to realize he's talking about high caliber leaders in that sentence. So it's not talking about your customers. It's not talking about even people that you help get to silver or gold, because our team is comprised of a lot of people who do hobby work with this, and that's fantastic, who want to do a little bit or want to be a part of the culture, and that's fantastic. There's places for everybody here. But when you talk about creating that 10x growth and creating the leaders, creating those jewels and diamonds, those are the people who you're looking for. That when you have those right people, it's going to be the self-motivated, the people who are producing the results and moving forward. You don't have to drag them, right? So there's both. So realizing like, okay, I can help people on both ends, but ultimately on top of that, I need to find, develop, and, I'm linking arms, looking for those people who are the right people on the bus, and in the sense for that too.
I love that part too. And we've always said, I know you've always taught this team, like focus on the top 20% of your business when you're really focusing in on where to spend your time and your resources and all of your, coaching energy, focus on that 20%. So I thought that was interesting that they're using that same percentage, focus on the 20%.
Back to the ritual thing that you were talking about, when I read that section, I was thinking about like for our customers and then also for our business builders. So for customers, it kind of made me think of like you have to be the one taking the reins on the conversation. And so normalizing, like we don't ask to put them in a three-way chat, we just do it, right? Or like normalizing, okay, next step, most people start with a wellness event. And it's a great way to learn additional information about our products and have some friends and family, come and check it out with you. Okay, our next step is, whatever. Or even if you're like talking to a business potential, and you go back and forth with some information. All right, next step, I'd like to get on the phone with you. Like you're taking the reins and you're normalizing, this is what we do. And then I was thinking for business builders too, like along the lines of like, what are the standards for our business? And like just normalizing a minimum of 3 joins per month. Normalizing like we're going to develop silvers. Just, normalizing those things. And that is the ritual. That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm sure there's other examples, but I think that you have to know the standards and you have to know the next steps for your customers, but then also like instilling that in your business builders too, like because a brand new person coming in probably doesn't know that you need to go silver every month, so it's like the ritual is you are constantly talking about that and keeping that in front of people, so yeah.
I love that verbiage, normalizing it. It's just what we do. This is your next step. Good. Who else? Anyone else struggle with that relinquishing control on teams? I know I do sometimes. It's hard to trust people, especially when you're like, this is my team and I got to trust this new leader or whatever with to do these specific things or whatever. Like that can be really hard.
Sometimes that's similar too to if you think about like if you have toddlers or young children, you're like, well, I could have them do like unload the dishwasher, but it's going to take longer, or they could wash dishes, but they might still be a little dirty, or, you know, it's harder to explain and teach something, but it takes longer and more effort. So yeah, the alternative is, well, if I just do it myself, it's going to be done how I, you know, right or faster. Versus though, when you take the time to teach later, it frees you up, right? So they will get good at it. They will be doing it on their own, and you don't have to be right there with them. And, you know, so, and then you free up your time and you create the leaders.
Absolutely. I know I'm guilty of that with events, like with new people, you know, instead of walking them through, I eventually do, but instead of walking, I'm like, I'll build it real quick and you just add people. That doesn't help them in the long term.
Well, I know that when I was raising my kids, and I've given this advice to many, many, many a mama, when my children were like 18 months old, I would literally, you say, go pick up your toys, and they have no idea what you're talking about. So you walk them over, you bend down with your hands on their hands, and you pick up the ball and you take it over to the toy box and you drop it in, and you know, do that. It's a pain in the tail, but when they're 3 and 4 and 5 and 12, and you have already taught them all these little things along the way, I can just say, go clean your room, and they know exactly how I want it done. They know exactly what is expected of them. And I think that that was a great thought when it comes to this, because it does take longer to walk them through the duplication process. It does take longer to do all of the managing and training and whatnot. But, you know, a year from now, when they can run it and they know what they're doing, you know, it does free up your time. So if you're a mama with youngs, you need to get them working now, because when they're up until about age 8, they don't mind helping. After that, if you try to start then, you've already lost your game, girl. Already lost.
Exactly. I remember Eric Worre last year when he did that big network marketing call. One of his big things was like, have you been babying your leaders and doing everything for them? And most people were like, yeah, we just wanted it done. Anyone give any thought to what you can delegate or who you can hire? I know that had my brain going a little bit. I know for me, I had to hire a cleaner. That was just something off my plate that I needed to do and to help me further my business. And you have to think of it as that investment, because that's just one example. But, you know, I could say, well, I don't really have the money to hire a cleaner. Or I could look at it as, well, if I take that money that I'm earning from my Plexus paycheck right now, put it toward a cleaner, that frees up a whole lot of time that I can be investing back into my business. So like I said, that's just one example, but there's plenty out there in ways that you can delegate or hire someone to help you. Laundry. Yeah, that's next on my list. I loved where he said, get in the gain and not in the gap. That was really good too. Where he talks about if you go through something, and you have a learning experience, like we like to call them, get in the gain, not in the gap. So you could be looking at if you're having a loss on your points, for example, instead of thinking about like, gosh, I used to be up here and now I'm back here, you could live in that gap and just be down on your business and disappointed and frustrated and upset and just constantly be trying to like, you know, get that back or just in that hustle mode. Or you can get in the gain and learn from your experiences. So what did I have to learn from this? And grow what you do have left of your business, grow that, make that really solid and sustainable. So that way, as you're growing with solid steps. You're growing solid. When you gain that next 100 points, it's a solid 100 points that you're not going to lose. Like, what did you learn from that experience? I just thought that was really good. All right, last thoughts, anybody? Going once. Going twice. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Again, I thought this was such a good book. This was phenomenal. One more thing I wanted to touch on before we jumped off is our next book that we are working through. We're starting on October 17th. It's called The Game of Conquering. We're starting October 17th. We're not gonna meet for this book next week because it's not a Prime book, so it's taking a little bit longer to get here. So make sure you guys have it ordered now. That way you have it in time for October 17th so that we can all be on the same page together. Not just have it by then, but have it and have read through it and been able to digest some of this stuff. And then let's just all make a huge goal to be on, have our cameras on, come with thoughts. One of the big ways that you develop your leaders is for you to show up and you to show that you're engaged and involved. So this is one way that you can apply what we've learned in 10X is easier than 2X. So we were saying we might do a power hour next week instead. So maybe, you know, plan on that. Don't just call it a night off. Let's all get some work done because we got a Bahamas cruise waiting for us. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. I loved hearing everyone's thoughts and y'all have a good night.